Currently, there is an estimated 40 ongoing conflicts in the world today, primarily in the Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa. Historically, major civil and global conflicts have led to the widespread devastation of property and the displacement of millions. The root cause behind conflict is ethnic, political, or religious tensions within countries. This is typical of people at a stage blue or red level of spiral dynamic development. Spiral dynamics is a model that illustrates and theorizes the evolutionary development of individuals, organizations, and societies. To break it down, stage beige is the lowest level of development and refers to people's instinctual desire to survive by eating food, drinking water, and finding shelter. This is reminiscent of the prehistoric humans and cavemen of prior generations before the Industrial Revolution. Stage purple refers to people of a tribalistic level of spiral development. Rites of passage, rituals, and superstitions are the norm, common of many indigenous tribes. People at a stage red level of spiral development value egocentricity, gratification, conquest, and impulsivity. This finds common place during times of tribal warfare. Famous examples include the conquests of Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great. Although tribal warfare continues to be seen in many African and Middle Eastern countries even today. Meanwhile, stage blue values authority, tradition, morality, and rules, specific to a religious context, as observed in many conservative Middle Eastern countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia. People at stage orange value materialism, consumerism, and democracy, emphasizing the power of the individual, typical of many Western capitalist economies. Stage green is a pushback against the excesses of capitalism in stage orange, emphasizing egalitarianism and the importance of lifting all people up in society. Stage yellow is different from all the other stages, in the sense that people at stage yellow are aware of themselves and are able to effectively understand people at stages below them. In doing so, stage yellow people are able to effectively integrate multiple perspectives from different aspects of society in order to push society forward. Stage yellow people do not seek to demonize people at the lower stages of development. Instead, stage yellow people seek understanding and context above all else. Lastly, stage turquoise refers to individuals who create mass movements of people, striving to raise the consciousness of the society as a whole. Given the impoverished nature of many third world developing nations, people in either tribal or religious groups are prone to violence against each other, with the view that their group is superior. Low education, literacy, and income levels leave room for religious or tribal indoctrination, as many people are not consciously taught how to critically think for themselves. Hence, we continue to see conflicts being fought all around the world. While I appear pessimistic about the world, it is important to realize that on the whole, humanity is improving. Society is getting better over time as people develop to higher spiral development levels. For instance, this is true for many European countries. Throughout the centuries, countless wars were being fought in Europe between various nations, from Britain to France to Russia. This culminated in World War II, a cataclysmic event that fundamentally reshaped Europe's relationship to conflict. It was the severity of the war and its ramifications on people's lives, property, and community that led to the continent's development within the spiral dynamic model. Soon after, there began a need for cooperation and unity. This led to the creation of the European Coal and Steel Community, formed under the Schuman Declaration. The declaration created a common continental market for coal and steel between various European states in order to make war between them unimaginable, as steel and coal are essential ingredients for war. The purpose of the common marketplace with these raw materials was to make the states politically and economically interconnected so that they would work together as equal partners and with common organizations. Through this, in the decades to come, the European Union was formed. Today, the prospect of war in Europe is virtually impossible. Even while Russia continues to agonize Ukraine, it is unlikely that they will launch an invasion of the country. The bloc of European Union countries neighboring Ukraine will simply not let it happen, thus symbolizing the strength and power of the EU in its ability to tackle bad actors in the region. I assert that many African and Middle Eastern countries need to evolve in a similar way, eventually leading to the creation of a continental union designed to stop all wars. For this to happen, we might see more wars. Yes, it may get worse before it gets better. These countries need to evolve in accordance with the spiral dynamics framework. They need to learn from their mistakes. Here is something for you to consider. Historically, it was common for there to be war between cities. But after the creation of a nationalized army, it stopped. Think of all the wars fought between Chinese cities and Greek cities in the past. Over time, we may see the creation of one global military for all nations, a global force designed to maintain order and stability, preventing future conflict. As nations become more egalitarian, reaching the stage green and yellow levels of spiral dynamic development, we should start to see the development of a unionized military. The military could be run by an independent council based in Switzerland, with broad oversight over all its operations. It must be separate to the governments of nations, but held accountable by them. I argue that we will get there eventually. Here are the following features of this proposed global military. Number 1, it could be deployed anywhere in the world, with bases across the globe on all continents and nations. The military is there to ensure public safety and to hold bad actors accountable for any crimes. Number 2, crimes and misdemeanors will be set out in a constitution, followed by all members of the global military. Number 3, the governments of nations have sovereign governing authority on all legislative, economic, social, and political matters, but no authority over national defense and law enforcement. Number 4, the troops on the ground are local to the country they are in, but loyal only to the Swiss Global Military Council. Number 5, the Swiss Global Military Council is made up of over 200 people, each being a citizen of a particular nation member state. In doing so, every country gets a say on the council, hold it accountable, and advocate for their nation's security on the world stage, mirroring that of a UN-style representative body. Number 6, the Secretary General or Chief Leader of the Global Military Council will be elected through a vote by the 200 members of the Council. A maximum of 4 candidates can nominate themselves during the election period, held every 5 years. This prevents the vote from being overly divided among multiple candidates, making it difficult to determine a clear-cut winner. And number 7, the Secretary General acts like the President or Prime Minister of the Council and has broad executive powers. And finally, here are some of the common objections you might be having to this idea of a globalized military. Number 1, countries haven't evolved enough to simply let a global military run their national defense. Adversarial nations like China, North Korea, and Russia aren't simply going to let a global military take over their respective nations. While I acknowledge that this is true, we will come to a time one day in the future where the regimes within these countries will eventually topple. Democracy will be introduced, and over time the possibility of these countries joining the global military become plausible. We must consider a time horizon of over 100 years. Number 2, the council will be racked with infighting. An egotistical individual might seize control over the council and launch a global coup d'etat. This is unlikely to happen. Most people would be at a stage green level of spiral dynamic development by then. So the need for egalitarianism will trump the need for egocentricity, a common stage red cultural trait. Number 3, why Switzerland? Why not elsewhere? Switzerland is a neutral country on the world stage. We could base it in Zurich, or maybe even make the council an extension of the UN, another peak international body. Number 4, Some countries might go rogue and misuse their allocation of the global military to harm others. No, this is unlikely to happen. Why? Because the world is at a stage green level of spiral dynamic development. And lastly, number 5, the concept of a global military is too idealistic, you might be thinking. The world is never perfect. This is true, but if you told people living in the year 500 BC what the world would look like in the year 2000, they would think of you as idealistic. But it wasn't. We made it then, and we can do it again. Humanity is always evolving and progressing for the better. I feel like people are at a level of consciousness that is too low to realize the gravity of what I'm trying to explain. Do note that this will take some time. In the end, I argue that we will get to a global military.